I'm Alexis Smith. I'm a planner and urban designer for the San Francisco Planning Department. Parklet is a repurposed parking space. It's pretty much a platform built in a on-street parking space that brings the space up to sidewalk level, and then from there the sky's the limit. You can put benches, cafe-style tables and chairs, plants, bike parking, art exhibits. People have done everything on them, which is what makes them so interesting. We've begun to realize that, even if there's a park right next door, they have an unbelievable amount of value in bringing vibrancy to the street life there. They're a place where people linger, where they stop, where they chat and gather, and that really activates the street, and it's so exciting to see how much they can do to increase the vibrancy of a neighborhood commercial district. Our original inspirations were the Parking Day program that was started by Rebar in San Francisco, which was the idea. It was kind of a guerrilla movement where you take one parking space and roll out a temporary park just for an afternoon, feeding the meter to keep it legal. And we kind of looked at that and saw it getting more and more successful and said, well, hey, there's no reason why this should be only for one day. Is there a way that we can make these semi-permanent? And another inspiration came from the work that New York City has been doing in terms of transforming space that had been traditionally allocated for private vehicles to places for people. And so we began our own version of that in San Francisco, doing some larger plazas like New York City, but then also doing smaller interventions like the Parklets. The program has been in place for about 3 years. We started with a pilot project of just 2 Parklets. There are 35 Parklets on the ground right now, 30 more in design review, and we have a waiting list of over 150 people who have expressed interest in installing them. So it's gotten really popular. So the way it works is the business applies and the Parklet sponsor agrees to cover all the costs of construction of the Parklet and agrees to maintain it. So aside from staff time, it's not a huge draw on the city's resources. We have had several nonprofits sponsor them, and we've also had one Parklet sponsored by a resident who just decided to give up the on-street parking space in front of his house to install a Parklet and create a little area of interest along his street. Initially, we don't ask for any designs as part of the application because there are so many people who have great ideas about what they'd love to see happen in their community. They have really strong bonds to the neighborhood, but they're not designers. And so we don't want, that's exactly the sort of person we want applying, but we don't want them to be intimidated by the process, and we don't want to penalize them because they might not necessarily be able to draw a gorgeous plan. And so they submit their application, and we decide, in addition to technical concerns like, is this on a bus stop? Is the slope too steep here? We look at their potential for neighborhood collaboration. Have they been working with the community? Do they have the support of the people on their block? And if they do, then it's likely that they'll get accepted. And then from that point, we begin to work with them on the design. Although an architect or a contractor isn't required, we highly encourage it. But even then, it's a very, very iterative process. And so they'll submit a plan, we'll give a lot of feedback, they'll revise it, go back and forth, because we want to make sure that it works based on our experience of what we see happen, but we also want to make sure it works in terms of the needs of that particular location, that it matches with the personality of that particular neighborhood. That's really important. The permit application fee is around $1,600 to the city, and that's a one-time fee, and then you can renew your Parklet permit for $200 every year. In terms of the actual cost to design and construct it, it averages about $8,000 per parking space, and Parklets are usually between 1 and 3 parking spaces. But I don't want that number to intimidate anyone. Sometimes it's much, much lower. People just put together something very simple, and it can also be much, much higher depending on how many resources and fine design and detailing and materials you want to put into it. But what's really great about the way the onus being on the business is that a lot of times they've used that as an opportunity to forge new partnerships among the community. We have some Parklets that have been funded entirely through crowdsourcing. By a popular local business that just had a lot of support. We have many that have used donated materials, pro bono professional services, either designers or contractors. A lot that have used volunteer neighbors, who've donated their time to help build it or have given input into the design. there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration that also help with that cost issue. One really great way to start is with a parking day installation. It's only one day, it's happening worldwide now on a Friday in September. And it's a really fantastic way to put something on the ground, something that's interesting and exciting, and then it goes away. And so people get used to the idea of what it is, what it's trying to do, without having to be scared about a permanent loss of parking or anything else. People get to understand what the idea is about. After that, I would say move on to a pilot program. It's temporary, it's a testing bed, it's experimental, you can try it out. And so if it doesn't work, you take it back up. And if people hate it, then you take it back up, you learn from it, and you try something else. 9 times out of 10, it'll be something that they end up liking. If that seems to be working, you know, and certainly along with the pilot program, it's largely a matter of getting some really key players on board. In addition to someone who really just is dying to get this done within the local government, it helps a lot to have elected officials on board. For us, it was really crucial to have a community partner who was in many ways a lot more accessible than the local government. They went out and talked to the potential Parklet applicant about the process when the applicant might have been a little bit nervous about contacting us. They went out and knocked on the doors of all the people on the block to explain what was going to happen and why it was such a great idea when we just don't have the capacity to do that. And so that was just crucial in the program getting off the ground in the first year or two when nobody knew what this was. Whoever the Parklet sponsor is, it's really key that they be on board for the right reasons. Especially at the outset, it shouldn't be a cafe owner who's just seeing this as a way to maybe get more seating. It should be someone who's really committed to both maintaining the Parklet but also to providing a space for the community, because that's the way it'll really get off the ground.